hello, everyone. Good to see you. And hello to YouTube. Welcome to Wellness Coach. My name's Stefan Ravelli, a host here at Wellness Coach, as well as a meditation mindfulness teacher and podcaster. And I'm joined today by the wonderful and the insightful Andy Lee. We're going to talk about mindful leadership. We're at like part 6 now, part 5 after the intro, the final part, right? We're going to talk about finding balance.
Yes.
All right.
And so balance is, well, I guess I should start us off with a practice, right? I hate to be stepping on your lines here, Stefan.
Oh, it's cool. I say the same thing every day. It's fine to hear other people say it, actually. That's fun. But I should do the whole housekeeping and disclaimer and all of that stuff. But I'm just as excited to talk about it as you. So let's jump into it. First, I'll remind everyone that today's discussion is interactive, and please do take advantage of those features. Ask us anything you want. I'll push your questions to Andy. Use the chat box, use the Q&A box, and put up your hand. We'll enable your mic and hear your wonderful voice ask that question. Just a reminder, though, that these features are only available on the app. You'll have to go to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store to download it there. And on YouTube, it's just a one-way street, though we're so happy to see you there. And great. I think that's the housekeeping. Done. It's your turn, Andy. Hands off the wheel.
Okay, everybody, welcome back for session 6. We'll get started with a brief practice, as we always do. And to do this, we'll take a posture of balance. Okay, we'll start our theme right now. And putting both feet flat on the floor and adjusting your posture so that you're not leaning. Maybe even sometimes what you can do is kind of zero in on being straight by moving left to right and then moving back and forth and really finding a sense of balance, a point of balance in your posture. And then when you find that point of balance, taking your hands and just dropping them into your lap, wherever they're comfortable. And now allowing your eyes to gently close, or keeping them open and looking downwards with a soft gaze, whatever works for you. And then noticing what it feels like to just pause. Noticing your internal state right now, whether there's a lot of energy or perhaps a sense of calm, perhaps a sense of joy or worry, whatever's present is fine. Just taking an inventory and whatever you see, just accepting it just as it is. And noticing the fact that you're breathing and allowing your awareness to follow the breath as it moves in and out of the body at its own pace. No need to control it in any way. And for these few moments, just resting in awareness of what it feels like to breathe. Following 3 more cycles of the breath in and out of the body. And when you're ready, allowing the eyes to open, letting your body stretch or move any way that feels good right now. And then preparing for our discussion to come. Okay. I think we're good to go, Stefan.
Thank you, Andy. And welcome to those of you just joining us. Really good to see some familiar faces here. Baljeet, Ryan D, and Marie and Julie, Jennifer. Some new faces, though, too. Please, guys, jump in there and tell us what's on your mind with mindful leadership. Tap into Andy's infinite wisdom on the subject. And please get these in because this is your last chance in this series here. This is the last part of our mindful leadership series. And today we're going to talk about finding balance, which just feels like the culmination of everything, putting it all together. So Andy, our previous discussion was about managing priorities, and now we're finishing with balance. How is this sort of the next step? And what is at stake here with finding balance? Like, what does balance look like with mindful leadership?
Well, balance is the beginning and the ending of everything. So you can think about it as it could really be in any place, and it really supports everything that's going on here. And it's a great note to end on, because a lot of times you talk about it first, and by the time you get to the end, people are so caught up in other things that they forget about this. But this is a really important foundational skill to take away with you as a leader, because as leaders, we're pulled in many different directions. And we're often taking care of problems. I mean, when people come to us, they come to us usually with problems that we need to solve, that have been elevated to us, or things that we need to take care of at a higher level. And we put other people's needs ahead of our own. And it's always important to remember that we need to maintain our own sense of balance if we want to be at our best. We can't just wear ourselves out and expect that to not have an effect on ourselves and our team. And that's why maintaining a personal sense of balance is really important, not just for leaders, but for their role as leaders, for their effectiveness as leaders, and their effectiveness of their teams. So that's why we put it last, because it's something that you really need to walk away with and remember.
So what are we balancing here? What forces are we keeping in balance? Is it just simply time spent on each thing, on work, on leisure, on health and well-being, stuff like that?
Well, that's part of it. And I'd like to back up a little bit, because a common topic used to be, and still is to some extent, this idea of work-life balance, right? So when we talk about balance, a lot of people assume we're talking about work-life balance. And what that means is figuring out how much time we're spending at work and how much time we're spending in our personal lives, and trying to maintain a balance there so we're not working all the time, which is, sometimes what happens, especially in leadership roles. But a lot of things around how work happens now has made that idea kind of obsolete. There's a gig economy where people may work at different times of the day, and take different times of the day off. Globalization means different time zones. There's so many things that are going on, and we're expected to be kind of on call beyond work hours many times, and also perhaps have times during the day that we can do personal things. So this idea of work and then personal life as separate blocks is eroding. It doesn't exist that way anymore. So what that means is balance is really something that we need to cultivate throughout the day. It's something that we need to constantly pay attention to, and see where are we? How are we doing right now? And what does it make sense for us to do right now to maintain kind of a sense of balance? So instead of a seesaw where one's up and the other one's down, you work like crazy and then you go home and you recuperate and then you go back to work, it's more like a balanced beam, a wide one with nets on both sides. But the idea is that throughout the day, you want to kind of check in and readjust what you're doing to maintain that sense of balance, which helps you to be at your best.
Right. So it's not necessarily imbalanced to have this sort of, erratic schedule that defines a lot of modern work. And also to be working a lot sometimes, like if your company is in a crisis, it's a sinking ship. You're like, well, got to take the kids to Disney World because work-life balance, and people whose livelihoods are depending on you are at risk, then perhaps that's not always considered a good call from some perspectives. So is this kind of a modality that we can apply to working a lot and working erratically then?
Certainly. And obviously, it's better if we have a balance in, that work-life mix, that mix of time between work and life. But the idea of balance that we're talking about is no matter what you're doing, you can pause for a moment and say, okay, what do I need right now? What would be helpful for me right now to maintain my balance or get back into balance, even if we have to work for long stretches or other things like that. So it's not just where we are physically, it's how we handle ourselves. And that's why one of the things we talk about is a sense of internal balance as well as external balance. And the internal balance is something that we can stay tuned into all the time. And mindfulness really helps us to develop those skills.
And it certainly has for me in my work experience. And I've had periods when I was opening a bar restaurant, and I was working 16 hours a day,
Yeah.
and but I would break off and I would meditate. And many would say, no, don't leave the ship, like keep driving it. But that 20-minute investment made all the ridiculous hours I worked after that much more efficient and productive. So for me, I guess it's a matter of like making the right investments that will pay off, even if it, in that moment of doing it, it looks like I'm sacrificing valuable productivity time. So
Yeah. And it pays off instead, right?
yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt. And not only like in the day, but over time too. Yeah.
Because what happens is once we get into those modes, like as you're describing, it's very tempting to just turn off kind of our awareness of our body and our emotions and just kind of power through whatever it takes. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to finish this. And sometimes that's appropriate, but what's always helpful is not tuning out of our bodies, not tuning out of our emotional states, and being aware. Am I getting stressed now? Am I getting tired now? When's the last time I had a glass of water? These things independently may sound a little minor, but they add up to us becoming very irritable or not thinking clearly or doing other things that really don't help us and don't help our teams. So this sense, the first trick to internal balance, it's not really a trick, but it's a skill, is to stop every now and then and to say, okay, what's going on with me right now? How am I feeling emotionally? How am I feeling physically? And what can I do to just take care of myself a little bit, even if it's just walking to the water fountain and going back, or getting a snack, or whatever is necessary. Those small changes can help if you pay attention during the day, because otherwise they're just going to build up and you could get yourself into a situation that's not productive.
Now, many of us that are tough guys or tough gals, who are not used to looking at themselves and asking those questions. What do I need right now? Or being reflective and saying, I'm being a bit snappy, and
Right.
this can be, a shift needs to occur.
Right.
Well, how do you recommend we actually do this? How do we look at ourselves? How do we really know what we need? How do we know if we're out of balance and action needs to be taken if we're not used to doing this?
Well, the first thing is a mindset. Okay, because a lot of us, as I said, sometimes a lot of leaders prioritize other people's needs and before our own. And we also think that we have to be the toughest person in the room, right? We can't leave until everybody else is gone. We have to show how tough we are, especially people who want to project that image, who take pride in it. But what I would encourage is maybe shift that mindset a little bit to think about an elite athlete. Okay, if you want to perform your best, you don't hear elite athletes bragging about how they stayed at the gym for 16 hours until they were completely sore and exhausted before a game. They don't take their nutrition lightly. They don't take their sleep lightly. They don't take their emotional state lightly. They know that all these things matter. And if we want to perform at an elite level, we need to take care of ourselves the way an elite athlete would. Now, obviously, we can't stop and have kale and all kinds of healthy things whenever we want when we're stuck in an office. But that mindset, I think, is the first step. And then how do you do it? Stefan, you gave a great example. One thing is you can pause at particular times, like every 60 to 90 minutes is a good time to take a break and just take like 1 minute and pause, come to silence, do a mindfulness practice. It can be 1 minute or it can be 3 minutes, and check in with yourself the same way that we did at the beginning of this session, and just say, okay, how am I feeling right now? What's my energy level? What are my emotions doing? And how's my body feeling? Are there aches and pains? Is there weakness or warmth or anything like that? So those intermittent pauses are the first step to maintaining internal balance.
And it's so funny how pausing sounds so radical, like to just stop moving for a minute. Like every organism does that, why don't we? But actually, I want to read a comment here about, like pausing, checking in, seeing what we need. And Jennifer mentions the guilt that comes around that. It's hard to
Mhm.
overcome when you're, uh, feeling so, I guess you can say, in charge of so much. So how do you overcome those guilt feelings?
I don't know if you can overcome them. I think you can tolerate them. And what I mean by that is just know, hey, you know what? I'm going to feel a little bit guilty, but this is worth it. Um, and the message here is we're going to feel a lot of different emotions when we do these things, but we can't let our emotions run our lives. We have to do what's right for us, and we have to do what's right for our team. So if that means that you're going to feel a little bit guilty, then maybe that's okay. It's not so bad to feel guilty. And then as you do this more, you're going to experience the difference and the guilt will become a little lighter. The other thing you should remember is that you are a role model for the people on your team or the people around you. So if you do these things, you're encouraging other people to do them as well. So you're contributing to their well-being. And instead of thinking about it in terms of guilt, should I or shouldn't I do it? Maybe think of it in terms of standing up or a sense of courage, to do what you know is right, even if it may be unpopular. And the last thing I'll say is many times that guilt comes from us. Obviously, it comes from us ourselves. Other people often don't judge us as harshly as we do ourselves. So, and that was Jennifer, right? You said that made that comment?
Yeah.
So Jennifer, what I would suggest is do a couple of experiments. Try it once or twice and see what happens. And then maybe you'll be able to judge whether it's right or not. Chances are the impact will not be so bad. And once you realize that, it'll be easier to do going forward.
Yeah, and I feel like if you feel like you can't leave the helm for a little bit just to take care of yourself and keep yourself finely tuned so you can be the best person for your employees, that's a good time to look at your actual like role and look at the state of the whole organization and say, why can't I leave the helm? Like have I set things up properly? And am I training my people properly? Am I trusting my people properly? That
That's a
kind of
great,
thing.
that is a great point. I couldn't have said it better. I don't have anything to add to that. That's a really good point.
Definitely. Well, thank you. And Alicia Tucker says, this is a great question. It's a pithy question. What if we don't want to? What if our want to is gone, she says. And I imagine want to find balance. She's lost connection with it, possibly.
Mm, so she's saying, what if I don't want to find balance? What if I don't care about it? Is that it?
Yeah, the want to find balance is gone. That's the question
Mm,
I'm reading. Lost. She's lost connection to it. Yes.
yeah. Um, I think it's a good idea to try to see if we can rebuild that connection. Because in my experience, that it's when we stop caring about these things that we numb ourselves out. And while that feels good in the moment, because we don't have to worry, we don't have to worry about how we feel because we're just going to power through, as they say. That's not sustainable. Okay, that's good for a period of time. Sometimes it's necessary, but over the long run, if there's no desire, if you lost the desire to come back into balance, it could lead you to to end up in a difficult place.
And I wonder if that's a sign that you're already in one, that there's like a certain amount of burnout and numbness happening. So if this is the case, what's your tool belt? Since I guess, a lot of these situations are
Hmm.
really hard to come out of, because there
Yeah.
might even be like that total disorientation, this total like drowning feeling. How oh, she said yes, yes, and yes to what we're saying. So okay, we're hitting the nail on the head here. That's good. So when you're in this state, yeah, what's like your emergency finding balance toolkit here of practices and mindsets?
I think just a general mindfulness practice is a great thing to do. Another thing is a self-compassion practice is very helpful, and we don't really have time to get into that right now. But you can Google self-compassion as a practice, and it's because many times these things are generated by us being hard on ourselves. So by reducing the pressure we put on ourselves is a good first step. Another thing that I wanted to mention is this idea of external balance. So we've been talking about internal balance. We can also look about how we spend our time and the activities we do, and that can help us a lot also to cultivate our external balance. So if we're sitting 100% of the day, a way to balance that out would be to get up and move more. If we're constantly in a group, the balance to that would be to have some alone time, and vice versa. And in my experience, if you're spending too much of your time doing one type of thing and not enough of another, just by finding some balance in those activities can do a lot of good as we balance our external environment, and can help us to balance ourselves internally as well.
All right, Rob Chofi has his hand up. Kara, our moderator, is going to enable your mic now. Just come off mute and you can ask your question to Andy. Just give you a sec. Just turn mute off, Rob, and we'll be connected here. If the hand was up on purpose, sometimes it's by accident. And so we'll let it go in a minute if that turned out to be the case. I'll give you another sec to find the unmute button. It's in your, should be in your bottom left.
Bottom left.
Yeah, it is for us. I'm pretty sure it's for users. 2. Okay, let's return to things. That might have been a mistake. No problem, guys. Just it's good to be reminded of that feature regardless. Use that feature, guys, and use the chat box and the Q&A box to ask some questions in our few remaining minutes here, because I'm running out of them, so help me. But this has been really helpful so far, and a really important place to put our attention, because it's just, I guess, not in anyone's first impulse when they feel like they have such obligation to others.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the other thing I would say is, these things are always a work in progress. As I mentioned, the balance beam, think about it as we're always going to be off balance. Another good analogy is like when you paddle a canoe. You paddle on one side for a while, and then you get off balance, and then you paddle on the other side to come back. So it's not about being totally zen and in control and perfectly tuned in all the time. It's noticing when things are getting kind of out of hand in one direction and bringing them back. So it's a real active thing that we can play with and we can pay attention to. It's not like some perfect state that we try to maintain.
Great. And we got a question from Suzanne Jewell. It's so good to see you here, one of our coaches. She says, what is the best practice for overwhelm?
I think starting with the body is a really good place, because if we delve into paying attention to our emotions or our thoughts, that can lead to our overwhelm, that can contribute to our overwhelm. So if people are familiar with the body scan, it's just coming into silence and paying attention to one part of the body at a time, and moving through the body by paying attention first to any sensations in the feet, the legs, the torso, and throughout the body. It's kind of like just paying attention to the breath, but broader. And that helps us to make that connection again. Another thing is that people find that exercise is very helpful. And things like yoga or Tai Chi or running or weights help to relieve a little bit of stress, and that makes it easier then to do a mindfulness practice. So what I'm saying is kind of ease into it. And a lot of times the way to ease into that is to find a little bit of ease with your body. And then it can loosen things up and prepare you for more constructive options ahead.
All right, and thank you for your question, Suzanne. And I just want to remind everyone that actually I'm hosting a discussion with Suzanne tomorrow for part 2 of our Mindful Entrepreneurship series. You don't want to miss that. Very exciting. It's been very exciting so far to have those discussions, whether it's going to be awesome. And check her out on Mindful Mornings. All right, sorry about that cross promotion bit, Andy. Back to this. We've gone over time a bit, guys, and if you need to go, you can definitely do that. But we're going to chat a bit more and end with a closing practice shortly. But sneak in any last questions you might have. I've got one more, actually, in case anyone is worried about productivity. We've touched on this, but like, do you have working examples where, like a balance focused company, not just maybe the leader, but I imagine if a leader is focused on personal balance, that tone is going to be set for everyone else. And, the well-being of the employees is going to be invested in as well. Are there working examples of this, rather than coming at a cost to productivity? Can it actually bolster it? Or sometimes does it come at a cost to productivity, just maintaining our health and well-being?
Employers are getting very serious about encouraging and supporting the health and well-being of their employees because, number one, healthcare costs are staggering, as we all know, and companies pay a lot of those expenses. Number two, there's more and more research that shows when we're stressed, which is certainly one prevalent way to be out of balance, we're not as creative, we're not as productive, and we're not as collaborative as we are when we're in a more emotionally balanced state. So employers know this, and that's why there are, wellness programs that are springing up all over the place and that are being enhanced all over the place. So I think that at a company level, most people understand that a sense of balance is helpful for productivity. And on a personal level, I think that we've all had that experience, that when we stop and take a break and recenter ourselves, we may come back to what we're doing and say, why was I doing that? Why did I spend 2 hours on those emails when I have when I have a presentation to work on tomorrow? So a lot of times taking those breaks and coming into balance is very closely linked to priorities, where when we take the break, we can reprioritize things once we realize what's required.
Yeah, you've got that now annoying cliche of work smarter, not harder. And I guess if we could expand our idea of that, work smarter can sometimes mean stop working and meditate and then work. That would be working smarter, because I guess efficiency happens automatically when we're balanced because we have more capacity for it.
Yes, there's no doubt. I mean, I've worked for companies where there have been 2 or 3 teams working on very much the same things, and then I've also spent my time working on things that another team member has been working on. And it's because we just kind of go down these rabbit holes and we don't check in, and we just kind of follow our noses, and we don't stop to take a look and see what's required, what we really should be focusing on right now. And that's a lot easier to do when we take occasional breaks and check in with ourselves.
All right. Well, it's a shame that there's only room for one more question, but we got one here from Alicia. What if you're burnt out and you want to come back to your balanced, true state and you just don't know how? We have touched on this a bit, but is there anything more to add on that, Andy, or summarize basically what we've been talking about today?
Well, burnout can be it can be a pretty impactful state, and I wouldn't want to give anybody advice that I'm going to swear to that's going to cure burnout. I would really suggest that if you're feeling like you're seriously overwhelmed and you're having a trouble being at your best at work, that you contact your employee assistance program, or speak to somebody that can help you with some of the symptoms that you may be feeling. So I do think that mindfulness practice is helpful. It's not always the solution in and of itself. Sometimes we need real, personal attention from someone who has helped other people and who can work with us one-on-one.
All right. Definitely, valuable best practices here to apply all around. So definitely look forward to what you guys experience practicing this, how you're finding balance in your lives in future panels. So we'll see you guys in the forthcoming discussions we have with Andy. I don't know what our next series is going to be. We're still workshopping it, but definitely check it out once you see us pop up again. All right. So Alicia says, thank you guys. You're so welcome, Alicia. Thank you for your great questions today.
Thank you.
All right. So I will, I guess, pass things off now to you, Andy, if you want to leave us with a practice to do and send us off into the world.
Sure, will do. Thank you. All right. Once again, taking a posture for mindfulness practice, allowing the eyes to close. And noticing what's present right now, what the mood is. And thinking about the last time that you felt in a state of balance at work. When there was both a sense of energy, a sense of accomplishment, and a sense of emotional well-being. Just seeing if you can focus in on the most recent time that that was the case. And asking yourself, what is one thing that helped? What is one thing that helped to create that sense of balance and well-being? Was it the relationships? Was it the type of work you were doing? Was it some way that you were taking care of yourself at that time? And perhaps making a commitment to taking one thing that you know has contributed to your well-being at work and making that a priority going forward. Perhaps thinking right now how you can bring that quality into the rest of this week to help you achieve a greater sense of balance and well-being at work. And when you're ready, allowing your eyes to open again. So thank you, folks, and thank you, Stefan. It's been just a great pleasure to be able to talk to you guys every week, to have these conversations and answer your questions about leadership, about mindful leadership, and all the topics that we covered. Really appreciate the time, and I'm looking forward, as Stefan said, for us to come up with another workshop and join you again. And in the meantime, all the best to you at work. Keep that sense of balance. Keep practicing mindfulness. It'll help you to be a better leader, and it'll help you to bring out the best in your team. Thank you so much, and I will see you soon. Bye.